Dr. Rob Robinson, thank you for giving us your time. And my first question for you today is, what do you do, in your own words?
At present, I'm responsible for about 100 scientists at the Australian Nuclear Science and Technology Organisation, so I lead one of the institutes there. So I'm a physicist by background, but I'm essentially in scientific management at the moment.
Alright, next one. So how did you, recalling back to your first year of university, how did you find that?
I found it fairly intimidating, to be quite honest. I went to a pretty good school, but a fairly small one, and probably had been in the top 3 in my school, and then I actually was lucky enough to get into Cambridge in England, and then suddenly was being around a lot of other clever people who some of them could do stuff I couldn't do. I mean, maybe there was things I could do that they couldn't, but that was and I found it quite a bit intimidating at first, to be honest.
How did you decide on studying physics?
That's a very good question. I mean, I was good at mathematics all the way through school, and sort of drifted into that, and I got my education in England. Actually, in those days, you had to specialise earlier than one does in Australia. So one would do a broad range of subjects until one was 15 or 16, and then the last 2 years in high school, you sort of had to specialise into 2 or 3, and I did maths, physics and chemistry. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do afterwards, although I guess the school thought I was good enough to get into a top-class university, and they wanted you to try, these exams and so on. And I didn't do double maths in school. I would have liked to have done, but I was the only one in my school who wanted to do that. And so the natural thing, I mean, they picked whether to apply to Cambridge rather than Oxford, say, and the way Cambridge did it, you could enter to do what they called natural sciences, and then you postponed the decision as to what you actually specialised in. So I did, in my first year there, I did physics, chemistry, something called the crystalline state, which is about crystals and metallurgy and rocks and so on, and then you all had to do mathematics as well with that. So that's how I ended up there.
All right. So what skills do you think were needed to, or firstly, let's say, succeed in your degree and also for your job?
That's 2 different questions, I think. I mean, obviously, a simple answer would be you've got to be good at passing exams. And that's an art in itself. And the school I went to, we were tested all the time, so you got a lot of practice before you took the exams for real. I think in the sciences, having strong mathematics is really absolutely crucial, and so that's the bedrock of doing science. But part of passing exams is writing well as well, and that's true in your day job as well. I mean, you can do great research, but at the end of the day, you've got to communicate it to other people, either through talks and lectures and so on, or normally both you have to do, or through papers and so on. So writing well, it's not much use if it stays just in your head and you can't communicate it to other people.
Alright. I guess they'll like to hear that. Our whole course has been about learning how to write well, communicate effectively in science.
So I actually was early in my career, I was a high school teacher. I did that for 2 years before I did my PhD, and it's pretty simple, teaching chemistry, say, which I did, having a class full of 30-odd 13-year-olds, and you've got to explain what they're trying to do, what question they're trying to answer, get them to do the experiment, do it safely, clean up afterwards, write it all up. I mean, that's sort of the way life is, even as a practicing researcher. So it's and those are skills you just have to learn, and perhaps they become more important later in life. Because as a professional, you've got to communicate your results, but you've also got to raise money as well. So you have to write proposals, and if you can communicate what the idea is and get people excited by what you're trying to do, they're more likely to give you money to support what you want to do than if you communicate it badly.
Definitely. Yeah. All right, the tough one now. So, if there was a movie made about your life,
yes,
what would be titled? What genre would it be? And who would you choose to play you?
Oh, well, I thought I was only going to get the last question, so I think Harrison Ford, of course. Or maybe Sam Neill. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the movie The Dish and the character that he plays in that. I think that's really brilliant and a beautiful picture of the way scientists really operate. So, what were the first, what genre?
Genre, title.
Title, oh heavens. A Life with Neutrons, maybe.
Nice.
Which is sort of, I use neutrons from the reactor here at Lucas Heights. Well, I suppose sort of historical novel or romance. You know, I think what you know, people think science is very dry, but if you read, you know, any stories about the characters in science, and we're all people, we all have all sorts of interesting things go on elsewhere in their lives. I mean, I was big time into mountaineering earlier in my career, but a lot of skiing. There's, you know, there's all sorts of facets to life aside from the professional one that one tends to be known for. Yeah.
All right. So, if you had to give one piece of advice to students looking to enter into research, what would it be?
Be patient, because you know, there's a lot of slog in research. Be patient. You know, you're out there on the frontier, it's like exploring, and so, you know, it's not, probably the thing that's the biggest surprise is it's not all in a textbook somewhere where the answers are known, and you don't even know whether you're going up a, you know, a dead end, right? So it can be pretty frustrating, but most people, you know, they will find something interesting in doing research, and you can find a good story out of that. So, and then you might move on to the next thing, and that might be different.
All right. So just going back to your life in university, is there one particular like memorable lecturer or tutor you had, and who were they? How did they teach?
Yeah, I remember probably more memorable ones in school, but I took lectures with a man called Malcolm Longyear, who was an astrophysicist. He actually ended up being full professor in Cambridge after I left, and Astronomer Royal for Scotland. But he was a relatively young man when I came across him. He taught the most boring course they had, but tried to make it exciting. So he did it through personality and, you know, enthusiasm and so on. Yeah, so he was probably the most memorable. Malcolm Longyear.
What were your initial impressions of your degree? So let's say when you just jumped into it, what were your initial impressions? And how did they change, like, throughout your time studying?
Well, I said I was intimidated by it at first. And I had a supervisor who was a very dour Scotsman. I mean, he was a full professor, a real expert very famous man, actually, in electron microscopy. But after a while you realise, you know, all these famous people, they put their trousers on in the morning just like everybody else, and they're not all so much smarter than us anyway, right? So they get caught out. I mean, I remember in my third year we had a Nobel Prize winner lecturing us, and he got in a complete tangle on the blackboard. We could all see what the next line was, but you know, it's hard performing, and you know, and anyway, he got himself confused, and so I made the friends of my lifetime there. Actually, I was still close friends with people I was an undergraduate with, and they went into all sorts of other walks of life. Yeah, I mean, I probably was a bit of a nerd, and just, you know, I was determined to do the best I could. So, I always played sport, but not as much as I maybe would have liked, because I did concentrate on the studies. And yeah.
That's about it. So thank you for your time,
Yeah.
Dr. Robinson.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.